Wouldn't it be nice if Adam Sandler didn't count the dates up all so wrong? And wouldn't it be nice to talk together in a format that goes way too long? You know it's time to rewind, baby, for 19 dates of this movie with Drew Barry. Yeah, wouldn't it be nice? Good morning, listeners. It's another beautiful day here on It's Time to Rewind. I'm your host, Bubbawheat, and joining me today is my guest, Nick Rehak. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. And this season we are discussing, oh man, you'd think I'd remember it by now. What was the movie again?
It's from 2004, and it's called 50 First Dates.
Oh, right. Of course. You'd think after doing this so long that I would remember it by now, but it's actually 19 first dates, and we are going through them one date at a time. And this week's date is what I'm calling their 19th date because it's their 19th on-screen interaction, even though it's not technically a date because they are married with children at this, or with a child at this point. But it does start at 89 minutes and 29 seconds with Lucy waking up and playing her latest tape, and it ends at the end of the movie. So we have I've made it to the end. This feels like it's been an interesting project, especially as I've been recording this concurrently with Fight Club and coming hot off the heels of Memento and taking a very different look at a very similar condition. I won't say that this is the exact same condition because they do get a lot more distance out of Lucy's memory by having her memory reset on a daily basis rather than, every not 10-second Tom, but like 10-minute Tom, like 10-minute Leonard, where his memory tends to reset, anywhere between like 5 and 15 minutes, just whenever he loses focus on whatever he's doing at the moment is whenever his memory resets. But Lucy, she's able to keep it throughout an entire day, which makes it less physiologically accurate, but easier to handle in a romantic comedy.
Absolutely. And, the way you're describing it just now, how, you have 10-second Tom, the character's 10, 15 minutes or so, and then her when she goes to sleep. I wonder if there's ever been an instance where she took a nap in like the middle of the day and comes out of that nap and is like, what the hell's going on? Like, what is the length of time it takes for that, I guess, synapse to reset or whatever? But that's another question for a whole other podcast altogether, I'm sure.
But you're actually not the first person to bring that up.
Okay,
and
good.
and I do think that that is based on, like, again, this is a fictional mental condition. It's loosely based on the short-term memory loss, but they extend it to the entire day. But my guess is that in this fictional version, it's tied to like her REM sleep. So I think if she takes a brief nap but doesn't get into that deep, that alpha wave sleep, then she would wake up and not lose her memory. But I also think that, if she gets insomnia and she ends up not being able to sleep and she doesn't get that deep alpha wave sleep, then she could maybe go 2 or 3 days of retaining her memories.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
yeah.
I never even thought of that side of it. That's a whole different movie. That's a borderline horror movie. And that you can't do a comedy with that one. That one becomes a drama real quick.
But this wraps up the movie, and so we just the last episode is them getting back together. It's that nice reunion, and then we have this fade to white before this clip of Lucy waking up and starting the videotape, and then we get to see the brand new version of the videotape, even though it does still start the same way with the accident because you still have to keep that bit in. Like, what do you remember the first time you watched it, and like whenever this scene started, it's like what you thought was going on?
When I first saw it, I'm like, okay, something at the art school and or at teaching art at the hospital facility and everything. I'm like, okay, she's like teaching the class. Like we're just seeing her side of things. And then somehow Henry pops up, or Henry also has a job there, or just something in general, because the way the scene is designed, her bedroom and everything, it could very easily just kind of be at that place, or it could be anywhere. Right. So my first thought isn't, oh, she's on a boat in Alaska right now. My first thought, it was always like, oh, she's in a room, and then here's how we're going to introduce Henry, and then the film wraps up. So then when it becomes the big reveal, poorly poor CGI by today's standards, but when it comes that big reveal and it zooms out and then asks, I'm just like, I remember being like, oh wow, that's so great, they're there, and then you can kind of see a couple people on the boat, and you're like, oh, I'm glad that who all's here with them now. Then it becomes that kind of guessing game.
Yeah, and then jumping back to the videotape, we get to see their wedding, and this is, if you kind of think about it, it's like this, uh, it's well edited, or they have multiple cameras going. If you think about
Yeah.
this, on the VHS, because we have this moment where this joke, and with, of course, Ula is the officiant, which
Mm-hmm.
what's your thought on Ula and Rob Schneider in general? Because I know I think he has a few good moments throughout the movie for me, but I think that the all the negatives, that's the worst parts of this movie, the vast majority of them are centered around Ula as a character.
I feel like he's real hit and miss. It's Rob Schneider being Rob Schneider, really. And sometimes I hear a Hawaiian accent, sometimes I don't. um, and it works for what it is. But part of me was thinking throughout the whole thing, it would have been really cool if his Adam Sandler's kind of like goofy sidekick friend was actually Nick from the cafe. And then once he meets Lucy, Nick starts to let him in on like what's going on with Lucy. And he's like, how come he never told me? And then you could have like a nice B line or a B story, A story being, Henry and Lucy, and then the other one of like these two friends kind of reconciling and determining like, how come you didn't tell me about her, or what's all this stuff? It's interesting. It's this whole other facet of your life kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. Tying it all together in a bow. I think that would have been a neater approach and something a little more, I think, traditional and Hawaiian. Just because Rob Schneider, I'm like, in some of these scenes, I'm like, man, I get the like make believe Hawaiian when he's, doing a song about, loving his wife's sister and wanting a divorce or whatever. But I feel like I could see other like genuine Hawaiian people in on camera being like, can we finish this up? Like,
Yeah,
I'm not a
and
fan of this
actor
right now.
right, and the actor that plays Nick is an actual native Hawaiian,
Yeah.
where Rob Schneider, I've mentioned several times, he's his only slight claim to it is that he's one quarter Filipino.
Okay, sure. I'll take that. I guess. But I just feel like sometimes the accent's not consistent enough for me. And I mean, I get it though. Like he's just this goofy sidekick kind of guy, and he's just there for the laughs. And that's where it kind of reverts to that Adam Sandler type humor. If you take out the Rob Schneider thing, you still have a really decent rom com, because after a while, he's not even hanging around Ula anymore. Ula just kind of
Mm,
pops up when they want to have a joke for some reason, like when Henry and
yeah.
Lucy go into his little lab and they're getting ready to have sex and everything. He's like, get dolphins, get out of here, and then here he's just come popping up under the water and stuff. We're like, all right, are these jokes for the men that are here with their wives or their girlfriends? Like, what
Yeah,
the hell?
and of course he's also got the very like almost like boomer-esque humor of the guy that's is tired of his wife.
Mm-hmm.
and and we get a cutaway to his wife just flipping him the bird, and of course she also appears to be a native Hawaiian actress,
And just
but
very
she,
unenthused.
yeah. And then we also get the little moment in the tape, and again, like it's a cutaway. Like it seems like uh, if you're thinking of this from like a wedding photographer, it's like why would the wedding photographer show this? But from the movie, it's a nice bit of showing. Doug and Alexa having this look at each other where it shows that they seem to be a couple now.
And that always put a smile on my face because you always have to have that one moment in a rom com like that, or one moment in a comedy like that, and for it to be Sean Astin's character and the other woman, like it just it made me smile. And it could have been kind of cheesy and dumb, but I'm just like, yeah, that makes sense. I like this. I like this a lot.
Yeah, and I do, even though it is like a like you said, a pretty bad, like not nearly a seamless transition, but it was okay for 2004 standards
Mm-hmm.
of the zoom out through the window and showing the Alaskan seascape. The but that's and Henry's boat on the water, and
Which
then
what
Lucy coming. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the more I think about it, as they're zooming out and the way you're looking at it, like, is it me or is that bedroom area a little too big for that boat? I feel like the
Uh,
way the boat's laid out, I don't know. I think we got some Overlook Hotel type designs going on right now where things aren't as they seem.
the boat's a little bit of a TARDIS.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah, it definitely does not look. It looks bigger on the inside for sure. And then, of course, we get this introduction. Lucy gets introduced to her daughter, and again, this is like such a bizarre situation to think to like put yourself into Lucy's headspace and to think about. And I know that they referenced it earlier in the movie, like how would that work? Like, I would when during the 9 months, or I guess, the 6 months, whenever she was clearly pregnant, for her to wake up and realize that she was pregnant whenever yesterday she didn't even have a boyfriend.
Yeah, that's got to be insanely overwhelming. You wake up, you have to watch this video that explains your life to you. And then a strange person says, "Hey, honey, come on outside." You wake up in a completely different state, literally, physically, and of mind. Your dad happens to be, it's like a weird dream. It's
Mhm.
like I'm having this bizarre dream. And then I'm not a parent, but I would imagine, like, if I'm being introduced to like a child, that would be insanely overwhelming as well. Like, and then he just comes over like it's normal. He's like, "Hey, what's up, babe?" And he goes back to the table to eat. It's just so intensely overwhelming. How does she just not go catatonic or just have a complete and absolute breakdown?
Yeah, and I'm also curious, like how their morning routine works, especially considering that we saw what happens if Lucy wakes up and sees Henry in the bed next to her. We saw how that played out. But in this one, I get the feeling that Henry has learned to wake himself up before Lucy, so that he wakes up, gets out of bed, and then allows Lucy to wake up on her own in an empty bed so she can see the tape and watch the tape. And then he comes back and introduces himself every morning. Like that also feels like a weird morning routine to have to deal with. Like, if you can't Henry can't uh sleep in, or else he runs the risk of being attacked by his wife.
Yeah, which is really bizarre. And also, she doesn't need to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom at all. When she was pregnant, she didn't have any weird cramps that woke her up or any like strange pangs. And she's just like, "What is happening? Where am I? Who am I?" Like, that's seems a little far fetched, but for the movie and for the premise and for what it's trying to do, it works, I guess.
Yeah, and I think in general, like this is, a happy ending. I guess it's nice because it does show the audience that they have learned to cope with Lucy's disability, and Henry is been able to not just work on his dream, but he's been able to accomplish his dream of studying the walruses in Alaska, and he's able to bring Lucy and Marlin and their daughter with them on this expedition. And even though Lucy again does still have this disability, so but they're able to get on with their lives and not just be trapped like the way that Marlon and Doug was whenever they were pretending it was the next Sunday every day.
Yeah, and I think that just shows the characters. It shows that they are beyond committed. There is such an immense amount of love that, I mean, you see it obviously with with dad being there and him being there and them going through all of this work and all of this effort to do that, but it's just still, you don't really think about it until you take a step back and you're like, wow, like that's such an incredible amount of love. Am I capable of that love? Do I love the people around me as much as they're love her and as much as they do for her? It's just such a, it's overwhelming on multiple levels at the end, because obviously Doug and Alexa, they're back at the house while dad's out and about with the family and everything. But just knowing that there's like so much love there, it's a very much a feel good happy ending for sure, because like you
Mhm.
said, it touches on them. Hey, we're all living with what Lucy has going on and we're making it work and we're going to live our lives and it's going to be great. And there's so much love behind that. Oh, what is it? Maya Rudolph's character early on in the film, where he's like, "So you wake up every day and wait for her and fall in love and stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh," to her boyfriend or husband or whatever. She's like, "Oh, you asshole! You wouldn't even open the door for me," or something like that. But just
Mhm.
just such a tremendous amount of love. It's nice to see it and nice to feel it, whether we realize it subconsciously or not.
Yeah, and Drew Barrymore really makes us feel like this, like Lucy as a character is someone that is able to deal with this because Lucy as a character just always has so much love and she's so able to roll with it and she's very smart, like she's able to figure things out on the fly and some of her early interactions, like she's the type of character early in the movie, whenever she doesn't want to interact with Henry, she's able to just start speaking Chinese on the fly just to avoid interacting with him.
Yeah, and then she really leans into that later in the film because she's walking around in art class in a kimono type outfit, and they have Chinese lanterns hanging in the bedroom and everything. So there's a part of her life that's still there and prevalent, and that she's able to tap into it. Or she talks about how she's got a make believe boyfriend. What was it, Ringo McCartney?
Yeah. And it's also like not even thinking about the being pregnant, but it's also like kind of a horror movie whenever you think about like how their kid has to cope with her mom not remembering her every day, like every morning. It's like whenever she has a nightmare and she like wants to crawl into her parents' bed, it's like she has to worry, has mom's memory reset? Is it early enough that mom's memory hasn't reset yet? And is she going to remember me? Is she going to wake up and freak out? And then we have to deal with that. It's like show her the videotape in the middle of the night, reminding her that she has a kid.
So like, I guess, what do they do with the kid then? If like when she was like a baby and like crying in the middle of the night, did they just have to sleep in a separate house all together? Like that's crazy. Like I'm the more and more I think about it, the more questions I have.
Like has a post-it note above her bed, like that's your baby. She's crying. You have a memory. You have a
That's
memory
how a
loss.
horror movie starts. You open up and there's just a note on the ceiling. That's your baby crying. What? That's when they look down and they see like a weird scar and they're just like start to freak out and like, oh my god, that's incredible. That's a movie we got to write now. Scene cut to
Yeah,
eyes opening, baby crying.
yeah, 51 first dates, the baby years. But then that ends the movie, and I do have to talk a little bit there. I mean, there's actually like a ton of movies that play over the credits, and I'm not gonna cover every single one of them. But this first one that starts playing like as soon as we get the zoom out to the Alaska is let's see if I can pronounce his name. I didn't practice it. It's Israel Kamakiwe Ole.
Sounds good to
That's
me.
I think that's as close as I'm gonna get. So that it sounds okay. But had you ever heard this song before? This is it's actually a medley of Somewhere Over the Rainbow and What a Wonderful World.
I had not heard it until this movie, and then it all of a sudden was everywhere, and I started hating the song because it was everywhere. And I'm like, the guy's got a nice voice. It's a very like chill and relaxed, like loving kind of song, but I don't want to hear his voice. I don't want to hear the song ever again, but only because it was played like so much everywhere after a while. Like every so often you get like a credit card commercial where, someone's buying a whole bunch of stuff so they can fly and see someone they haven't seen in years or something absurd. And then that song starts playing. And, it's just, I like it, but in small doses.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to bring it up because I forget where, I think it was on the radio where I heard a bit of trivia about this track, uh and it's crazy. This song was recorded in a spur of the moment demo session in 1988.
What?
Israel called the recording studio at 3 a.m. and he was given 15 minutes. He said that the recording engineer Milan Bertosa gave him like, well, if you can get here in 15 minutes, then we can do this. But otherwise, we don't have time for you. And he showed up, and this he's a native Hawaiian, and he Hawaiians are kind of known for a uh, a lot of obesity, and he was like 500 pounds at the time, and the engineer remembered that the first thing that he was trying to find something for him to sit on, and then he put some microphones, did a quick sound check, and the first thing that he does is Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and he played it in one take, and that was it. And he made copies, and that then I
What?
yeah.
No, there's no way. That's a movie in of itself. That's one of the craziest things I've ever heard. That song does not sound like it's from 88. That song sounds like it was recorded specifically for that movie. That is insane to me.
Yeah, one thing that I
Wow.
don't see in the Wikipedia article, but I thought I remembered hearing like when it came out, but I don't know if it was like at the time or if it was as it became popular later, but it became like one of the most requested songs whenever it's kind of uh became discovered, because I do think that it gained popularity before this movie came out, which would have been 2004, and that's uh they did re-record it a year later, and which he uh, put on his studio album, and it's been used in other movies as well, and it's kind of, I think it hits waves of popularity these days.
Mhm.
It was also in Finding Forrester, Fred Claus, um, ER, Charmed, Scrubs. So
Crazy to me.
yeah, it's made the rounds, and it
Mm.
is like it's kind of crazy. Just I haven't it hasn't been overplayed for me. I've really only heard it in this movie, and maybe a couple other places. I definitely, I think I watched Fred Claus this past Christmas season. So I definitely recognized it there as well. But he just has this, beautiful voice, and it's one of those, and it has the ukulele playing, and it feels like it's weird to think of like how well the ukulele actually fits with this song and with his voice.
Mhm.
And it's just such a sweet song. Whenever I was doing a little bit of research, I found a Reddit thread where somebody mentions that they've heard it played at funerals quite a bit. So which I think that makes sense as well. But like
That's a bummer. I would not want to hear that at a funeral.
well, I mean, like, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It's a very like
Totally.
hopeful,
Mhm.
wistful song, and I think it's really a perfect send off to this movie. And then also gets this little comedic moment with the walruses kissing each other.
Well, because you have to, right? Because in an Adam Sandler film, you can't do anything too serious for too long a time. You got to have, and that kind of ruined it for me when all of a sudden the walruses are kissing. I'm like, just end the movie. Like, if you want to do the walrus kissing, do it like at the very end. Like, credits are done, and then all of a sudden it's walruses kissing, and then that's it. You know what I mean? The walruses will return in. Rocco will return in.
Yeah, Jocko.
Jocko, that's what it was. Jocko will
Yeah.
return.
Yeah, and then we're not gonna go all the way into the credits, but I do want to talk a little bit about the first section of the credits because we do get these these images of the various Lucy paintings and some of her notebooks, and we get the a copy of the Henry's picture of that he drew in whenever he was trying to pick her up. And it has the little note at the top that says, Henry tried to pick me up with this drawing. And I have to mention that because I pointed it out whenever during the breakup scene, because they showed the close-up of her notebook and the handwriting is different
Hmm.
because the handwriting in the notebook that we saw in the movie, it reminded me very much of Leonard's handwriting in Memento because it was all
Oh,
print.
interesting.
It was all very straight letters.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like harsh. And the handwriting that we see in the notebooks and the writing and like even in the paintings and above the photographs, it is a it's more of a script. This feels more like a woman type script and it feels kind of sloppy, but like I have bad handwriting
Mm-hmm.
and this is like not the same bad handwriting as me, but there's definitely like some words it's like kind of hard to figure out exactly what letter they're supposed to be. And it's like you can kind of read it just because you know what you can read enough of the words that you know what the word is supposed to be, even though not all the letters are very clear to me. I think it's kind of quick handwriting. And then we also get like the baby picture. We get more paintings of, or at least one other painting of an elephant, which we brought that up whenever we saw her waking up in her room. I think it's interesting that Lucy likes to paint elephants because of the whole memory connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Was there anything else? And we also get like it does kind of kick off with a painting of Adam Sandler's face too, with his egg-shaped head.
Yeah, which they kept bringing that up more and more, and I'm like, I maybe it's just me, but I kind of don't see it. It didn't. I don't know. That one didn't land for me as much. Yeah, didn't land for me as much. But one time I want to see a film where when they're showing scenes and stills from like journals and stuff where it's truly just incomprehensible. Like it shows it to you as if you're going to be able to read it, and people are like, "Oh, why would they do that? Like this is a waste of time."
I mean, wasn't that like the opening of Seven?
Yeah,
Like I
all
can't.
those journals handwritten too. Can you imagine being on the production staff and being like, "Hey, gang, guess what we're doing this week? Fill these journals." What? I'm so, excuse me, David. Yeah.
Yeah, it probably took them like a month to do that.
If not longer. Yeah, just in a
And
room listening to Nine Inch Nails, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They're punching a clock.
and then we also get a little bit of there's a sketch of a penguin, of course, and then we get a stick figure drawing of the Lucy, Henry, and the daughter, which I'm sure that's the intention is that that was supposed to be drawn by Nicole, I guess is the kid's name because you see
Mm.
above the baby picture, you see written baby Nicole.
Okay, that makes sense. You know what's? It didn't even dawn on me. I'm looking at these baby pictures, and I'm like, all right, maybe for some reason it's Adam Sandler as a baby or Drew Barrymore as a baby, but no, it makes sense that it would be her baby because it's her
Yeah.
journal.
And then the last thing in the credits that I'm going to mention is that we do get this nice dedication to Stanley Sandler, Adam Sandler's father, who apparently, like I didn't look at the dates, but just based on the fact that it's dedicated to, he probably passed away during production or before this movie was released. So that's nice to have that dedication to Adam Sandler's father.
which I didn't see until my most recent viewing of the film. I had no idea that that card was in there at all, and it made me want to look and be like, "Oh, I didn't know that all that had happened and everything." And so that was pretty. I don't say neat, but it was a fun. Not I don't want to say fun discovery because that sounds weird, but it was interesting to see this like for once. And the film is almost 20 years old now.
Yeah, and uh, and then in the credits, there's yeah, I like whenever credits have interesting things like in the scroll.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to say that, I'm sorry. Apparently, I'm wrong, and I had even though I had just watched this like 10 minutes ago, or I an hour ago, as we're recording this, that I forgot that the scroll does also have sketches and additional things. But I do love whenever credits do that to give you something additional of interest besides just the scroll of names. And like we see a lot of like supposedly, I guess, Lucy's paintings and other occasional clips from her journal, a lot of pineapples and elephants again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's and also like some kids drawings, like there's and I'm scrolling through it right now. There's a kid's drawing of a waffle teepee, and of course the teepee is spelled in kid writing with one of the e's backwards. It feels very like Andy-ish from Toy
Mm-hmm.
Story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The letters being backwards and such.
Hmm. Um, and then see, we got the Hukilau Cafe. We have another like excerpt from her journal. Like I rode out to the pineapple field this evening. It's such a uh, see, I can't even read this writing.
Such an awesome. I love
Awesome.
knowing something. So it looks
I
like it's a
yeah,
half of a page. So you're just getting a bunch of garbled.
I love leaving something behind, something wide open space, free road, winds.
Sounds like a country
In
music song.
yeah, yeah, and that's the end of the movie. Um, this. Oh, I just caught something at the end, and at the very end, it says the Red Sox winning joke is dedicated to Kevin Grady, JD Donnarumma, Paul Saperstein, and David Kinnair.
Huh. Okay. I don't know who any of those people are, but hopefully they appreciated that.
Yeah, so that was fun. Thank you so much for joining me on this to wrap up this season.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely,
been
man.
like I've been kind of surprised because I'm hit and miss on Adam Sandler, and I know that I enjoyed this song, and I feel like it's not like top tier Sandler, but I feel like it's up there. It's kind of like B plus Sandler. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people would consider, and I think that that's where it fits for me. But also, while doing this, I have appreciated the movie a lot more. I found a lot more in this movie that I wasn't expecting to enjoy. There is still some problematic things, like Rob Snyder's character is not great through a lot of it, and the Alexa character, which I have been asked, talking to most people about Alexa, but I think everybody's kind of come onto the same page, so I'm kind of ready to let the discussion on the Alexa character. And yeah, I'll just briefly bring it up. Like I've talked a lot about how I feel like it's interesting to view Alexa in through a trans filter these days, because it definitely was
Hmm.
not written that way.
Yeah.
But I think looking at it now, or if it was made now, I think that she would probably be a non-binary character. Like, she would fully be a non-binary character rather than just a woman who has who looks kind of masculine. And so they make the joke where they're not sure whether she's a man or a woman, but it's generally treated in a positive light because she's never made fun of, and she's always very optimistic, so it doesn't feel very mean spirited, even though it does feel very 2004 looking
Oh,
back on it.
totally. And especially the physical aspect of her comedy too, and how she's essentially a cartoon character running around, getting slapped by fish, getting puked on, dumping into a bucket of dead fish. Like, I'm in the beginning, I'm watching this and I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, I don't remember any of this in the movie. Like, but she went through and nailed it. And it's interesting too, because there's some moments like when he's talking about, he's like, he says, I can't see her anymore. He's like, what would you do? And she's like, well, I would just have my eyes closed when she's servicing my manhood. And clearly she's speaking from his point of view, but as the audience, that doesn't necessarily connect so quick. So to hear her using terminologies and phrases interchangeable, male to female, leaning one way or the other, I think that was, like you said, I don't think it was planned that way, but today it kind of plays in that way of, it could be very well a character that is like that. And similar to the disability stuff too, it's not the punchline, it's
Mhm.
just part of the setup to what the bigger punchline is. And I think that's what makes it palatable and endearing, and not come across as like dated and malicious.
Yeah, and she's never excluded from anything. She's always
Right.
like a friend, and she never takes offense to it. She's always like very upbeat and happy, and she's always treated as Henry's friend. And I think all of that is very important to make it to help it not feel malicious.
And as a wingman to an extent too, because in the very
Mm.
beginning of the film, after he meets Lucy, he's having a date with that tax accountant, and he's like, yeah, but I got a friend over there. And then you just see Alexa like over there doing her thing.
Yeah. And again, the the her sexuality is never questioned either. Like it's never,
Mm.
she was she wasn't like offended that Henry sent a woman her way. She was just like, well, she's like, I appreciate it, but I just couldn't go through with it. It's like I chickened out.
Like a true friend would too. That's the thing. You talk to him next day, it's like, nah, I panicked and I bailed, man.
And then, as far as the future of this podcast, I do want to take a moment to address that. This podcast has definitely been fun. I've enjoyed doing 51st dates. I still have not fully decided what I'm doing next season. I think I have decided not to do Star Trek. I think that's too big of a project for me uh, right now, especially coming off of trying to do a Fight Club Minute and this podcast and Lyrical Innuendo all at the same time. It's been like, I knew it was going to be difficult. I'm not going to say that it was more difficult than I thought, but
Mm,
I am ready to lighten my load for a little bit. So I
there you
think
go.
that this podcast will be taking an extended hiatus until, like, at the very least, until Fight Club Minute is done recording, which I think uh, by should be done by this summer, give or take. And if you want to stay abreast on what I will be covering next season, then join the Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group. I may do some polls, or at the very least, that's where I will have the announcements whenever I do decide what I'm going to do next season. I think right now I'm kind of leaning towards British sci-fi, uh, going into like Doctor Who and Red Dwarf, because I've just at this moment, I am almost through doing a full rewatch into new watch of Red Dwarf. Previously, I've made it through like the fifth or sixth season or series, and right now I had just finished series 11 out of the 12 series, and then the I think the 13th series was just a movie. And there's definitely a couple episodes which kind of fit. There's not really any full on like the standard time loop format, but there are kind of some time loop adjacent episodes. And there is one episode of Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker that was the first episode of Doctor Who that I watched. That is like the full on time loop structure. So I would definitely be covering that, as well as there's a few other Doctor Who episodes that I'd probably throw in, and maybe go find some other maybe uh, some other British sci-fi uh, to help pad out that season. But again, just follow the Facebook group if you want to stay abreast, or just stay subscribed to this feed. And when the episodes start coming out, then you will see what I'm covering. And again, thank you, Nick, for joining me for these not these last two episodes, but these uh, these two non-adjacent final episodes.
Mr. Not in succession, not in sequence, something like that. There's a
Yeah.
pun to be made somewhere, and I'm not doing a good job of making it right now.
And for one last time, why don't you go ahead and take a moment to let everybody else know where else you can be found online?
You can find me over on rabbitholepodcast.com. Bubba, we talked about it earlier or mentioned it briefly earlier, but I'm his faithful co-host over on Lyrical Innuendo. You can also find me rabbitholepodcast.com. Play MST for me. It's a whole podcast. Jason Soto and myself, we're going through every single episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. If you want something a little more action-packed and explosive, I've been on a handful of episodes of the Exploding Helicopter podcast. Most recently, we've talked about films like The Island, The Gauntlet, The Sentinel, and other films that don't start with the word the.
And of course, you can find me everywhere on social media where I'm at Bubbawheat. You can find this show, It's Time to Rewind, on all available podcatchers. And, if you enjoyed this season and any of the previous seasons, I'd really appreciate it if you give me a 5-star rating and a review if the podcatcher that you use allows the written reviews. That helps increase our presence and our searchability and helps us find new listeners. And until next time, I will not see you again for breakfast next week, but whatever we end up doing, I will see you next time.
It's very cold outside, so when you're ready, put on a jacket and come have breakfast with me. Love ya.